On New Year's, my daughter asked the photographer to crop me out. No old people in the pictures. I just smiled. But when I canceled the mortgage check, she begged for forgiveness. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I spent 3 weeks planning that New Year's Eve party. 3 weeks shopping for the perfect decorations, ordering the catering, and making sure everything would be just right. At 60, I wasn't as energetic as I used to be, but I wanted this gathering to be special. Faith, my daughter, had just received a promotion at her marketing firm, and I was so proud. I wanted to celebrate her, to show her friends and colleagues that she came from a good family. My hands trembled slightly as I arranged the champagne flutes on the dining table. The house, Faith's house, gleamed with silver and gold decorations. I'd spent the previous day cleaning every corner, even though my back ached terribly by evening. But it would be worth it. Faith would smile, and maybe she'd introduce me to her colleagues with pride instead of that tight, formal tone she usually used. "Mom, did you put out the expensive champagne I bought?" "Not the cheap stuff you drink?" Faith called from upstairs where she was getting ready. "Yes, dear. Everything's exactly how you wanted it." I smoothed down my new dress, navy blue with a modest neckline, the most expensive item I'd bought for myself in years. Faith emerged wearing a shimmering gold dress that hugged her slim figure. At 36, she looked like a movie star with her perfectly highlighted blonde hair and immaculate makeup. Connor, her husband, followed in a tailored suit, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," I said, feeling that familiar swell of pride and love. Faith barely glanced at me. "The caterers put the seafood platter in the wrong spot. Can you fix it? And make sure you stay in the kitchen when the important people arrive. I don't want them thinking this is some kind of family gathering." I nodded, swallowing the small ache in my throat. Of course. By 9, the house was filled with Faith's colleagues and friends. I stayed mostly in the kitchen, emerging occasionally to refill trays. I caught glimpses of Faith laughing, throwing her head back, touching people's arms as she spoke. She looked so confident, so at home among these polished professionals. Connor stood by her side, nodding and smiling on cue. My grandson Mason found me hiding in the pantry around 10, taking a short break. "Grandma, why are you in here?" His 8-year-old face peered up at me, concerned. "Are you playing hide and seek?" I smiled and ruffled his hair. "No, sweetie, just taking a little rest. Grandma's feet are tired. Mom says you're supposed to help with the party. And I am. I'm just catching my breath." I straightened up. "Would you like to help me carry out some more of those little sandwiches?" Mason nodded enthusiastically. Together, we navigated through the crowd of strangers in Faith's living room. I caught Faith's eye across the room, and for a moment, she smiled. My heart lifted. At 11:45, Faith clinked her glass. "Everyone, let's get ready for midnight. Thomas is going to take our New Year's photos before the countdown." People gathered in the ornate living room. I stood awkwardly at the edge, unsure where to place myself. Faith was arranging everyone, her boss in the center, Connor at her side, Mason front and center looking adorable in his little suit. "Mom," Faith called, her voice sharp. "Could you hold these for a second?" She thrust several champagne glasses into my hands. I took them, assuming she wanted me to set them aside for the photo. But after the photographer had arranged everyone, Faith didn't call me back. I stood there, holding the glasses, watching. "Is everyone ready?" Thomas, the photographer, asked. Faith glanced around, then her eyes landed on me. Her mouth tightened, almost imperceptibly. "Wait," she said, walking over to me. I thought she was coming to take back the glasses, to include me in the photo. Instead, she whispered, "Just stay there, Mom. We don't need you in these shots." "But," I began. Faith gave me that look, the one that made me feel small. Nothing. Personal. We just don't need old people in these photos. It's for the firm's social media. I stood frozen as she walked back to the group, all smiles again. The photographer raised his camera. "Everyone say Happy New Year," he called. "Happy New Year," they chorused, their faces bright with excitement. I watched as the flash went off again and again. I was invisible, just the old woman holding the glasses. As midnight approached, Faith's words echoed in my head. "We don't need old people in these photos." Not, "We don't need you, Mom." Just old people, as if my age had erased my identity, my worth. The party continued past midnight. I cleaned up quietly, collecting plates and glasses while everyone celebrated. Mason found me again, hugging my waist. "Happy New Year, Grandma," he whispered. I hugged him back, blinking away tears. "Happy New Year, sweet boy." Later, as the guests began to leave, I overheard Faith talking to her boss. "Such a beautiful home," the woman said. "You and Connor must be doing very well." Faith laughed lightly. "We work hard. The mortgage is finally almost paid off." I nearly dropped the tray I was carrying. The mortgage that I had been paying for the last 5 years. The mortgage that had drained my retirement savings because Faith had called me crying, saying they were going to lose the house. The mortgage that I had one final payment left on next week, the big balloon payment that would finally clear their debt. I smiled and continued cleaning, but something had changed. For the first time in decades, I saw my daughter clearly. And I didn't like what I saw. I couldn't sleep that night. Faith's words kept playing in my mind like a broken record. "Nothing personal. We just don't need old people in these photos." I tossed and turned in the small guest bedroom of Faith's house, where I was staying for the weekend. The thin mattress did nothing for my aching back, but the physical discomfort was nothing compared to the pain in my heart. As dawn broke, I made a decision. Before driving back to my modest apartment, I would stop by my bank. There was something I needed to check. "Good morning, Mrs. Williams," Faith chirped as I entered the kitchen. She was already dressed in yoga pants and a fitted top, sipping a green smoothie. The party was a huge success. Mr. Daniels practically promised me that director position. I nodded, pouring myself a cup of coffee. "That's wonderful, dear." "Mom, you look tired. Those bags under your eyes aren't doing you any favors." She frowned, studying me. "You should try that cream I gave you for Christmas." "I'll do that," I replied, though we both knew the expensive cream had been a re-gift. The seal had already been broken when I unwrapped it. Faith scrolled through her phone, barely looking up. "By the way, can you watch Mason this weekend? Connor and I have been invited to Mr. Daniels' lake house. It would be really good for my career." I hesitated, which was unusual for me. Normally, I would have immediately agreed. "Actually, I have plans with Diana this weekend." Diana was my best friend, though we hadn't seen each other in months because I was always busy helping Faith. Faith's head snapped up, her blue eyes narrowing. "Plans? What kind of plans could be more important than your grandson?" The old Edith would have backed down, canceled on Diana, and agreed to watch Mason. But something had shifted inside me. "Diana and I are having a spa day," I said, surprised by the firmness in my voice. "We've had it planned for weeks." Faith's face hardened. "Fine. I'll ask Connor's mother, though you know Mason doesn't like staying with her." "I'm sorry, but I can't cancel again. Diana has been very understanding, but this is the 3rd time I've rescheduled." Faith set down her smoothie with a hard thunk. "Whatever, Mom. I didn't realize your social life was suddenly so important." I bit my tongue and said nothing. After breakfast, I hugged Mason goodbye. "Be good for your mom and dad. I'll see you soon." "Can I come to your apartment next?" "Weekend, Grandma?" he asked, his small arms wrapped around my neck. Dad says you have puzzles. We'll see, sweetie. I'd love that. Faith was already back on her phone, barely acknowledging my departure. As I got into my car, I felt a strange mixture of hurt and relief. The local branch of my bank was quiet that Monday morning. Mrs. Thornton, who had been my banker for nearly 15 years, greeted me warmly. Edith, Happy New Year. What brings you in today? I need to check something about the payments I've been making for my daughter's mortgage, I explained. Her smile faltered slightly. Of course. Let's pull up your accounts. As Mrs. Thornton typed, on her computer, I twisted my wedding ring, a simple gold band that had loosened over the years as my fingers grew thinner. Harold had been gone for 5 years now, but I still wore it every day. Okay, here we are, Mrs. Thornton said, turning the monitor so I could see. You've been making monthly payments of $2,100 directly to Citibank Mortgage on behalf of Faith. And Connor Williams, for goodness. 5 years now. I nodded. And the final balloon payment is due next week, correct? Yes, $43,000 on January 10th. That will clear the mortgage completely. She looked at me with concern. Edith, that's almost everything in your savings. Are you sure about this? I stared at the numbers on the screen. 5 years. Over $170,000 in total, including the upcoming final payment. Money that was supposed to be my retirement fund, the nest egg Harold and I had built over decades of careful saving. When Faith called me 5 years ago, I said slowly, she was crying. She said they were 3 months behind on their mortgage. Connor had invested in some business venture that failed, and they were about to lose the house. She was pregnant. With Mason at the time, Mrs. Thornton nodded, her eyes gentle. I thought it would be temporary, I continued, just until they got back on their feet. But then Faith lost her job, and Connor had medical bills. There was always something, and I couldn't let them lose their home, not with a baby coming. Course not, Mrs. Thornton said softly. You did what any mother would do. But had I? Would any mother drain her entire savings to keep her adult daughter in a house they couldn't afford? A house with a gourmet kitchen and a pool that Faith loved. To show off to her friends? Mrs. Thornton, who technically owns the house? Whose name is on the deed? She typed a few more commands. The mortgage is in Faith and Connor's names, but... She paused, frowning. According to these records, about 3 years ago, they refinanced and had you added as a co-owner on the deed. Did you know about that? I felt a cold shock run through me. No, I didn't. You would have had to sign paperwork. Memory flashed. Faith handing me a stack of documents after Sunday dinner, saying they were just formalities for the bank, something about restructuring the loan. I had trusted her and signed without reading carefully. I think I did sign something. I just didn't realize what it was. Mrs. Thornton's expression was careful, professional. Edith, this means you legally own 1/3 of the house. You're not just paying their mortgage, you're paying for your own asset. I sat very still, absorbing. This information, all these years I thought I was helping my daughter through a temporary rough patch. But Faith had made me a co-owner. Probably because the bank required it given my financial contribution, while continuing to present the house as solely hers. Last. Night echoed in my mind. The mortgage is finally almost paid off. She had said it so proudly, as if it was her accomplishment, her sacrifice. Mrs. Thornton, I said, my voice steadier than I expected, I'd like to cancel the automatic payment scheduled for January 10th. She looked surprised. The balloon payment? Are you sure? I nodded. Yes, and I'd like to see what other options I have, legally, as a co-owner of that property. As Mrs. Thornton began explaining my rights, I felt something shifting inside me. For decades, I had been Faith's safety net, her backup plan, her silent supporter. I had worked 2 jobs after Harold left us, put her through college, helped with the down payment on her first condo, and now nearly paid off her family home. And how had she repaid me? By hiding me in the kitchen during parties, by thinking of Me as an inconvenience, an embarrassment. Nothing personal. We just don't need old people in these photos. Well, maybe it was time Faith learned what happens when old people stop writing checks. The drive home from the bank felt different somehow. The same roads I'd traveled for years now seemed to lead somewhere new. Mrs. Thornton's words echoed in my mind. You legally own 1/3 of the house. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white. When I arrived at my small apartment, I noticed everything through new eyes. The faded wallpaper I had meant to replace years ago. The ancient refrigerator that hummed too loudly, the sparse furniture worn but clean. I had been living like this, sacrificing my own comfort, while Faith and Connor enjoyed their 4-bedroom house with the renovated kitchen and backyard pool. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at my kitchen table. My phone buzzed with a text from Faith. Mom, I need you to come over on Thursday to sign some papers. Just bank stuff. Nothing important. My hand trembled as I set the phone down without replying. What bank stuff would she want me to sign now? I opened my laptop. An old model Faith had given me when she upgraded to a newer one and navigated to my email. I needed to see what other financial entanglements might exist between us. As I sorted through years of correspondence, a particular email caught my attention. It was from 3 months ago, from Faith's real estate agent, apparently copied to me by mistake. I'd overlooked it at the time, assuming it was spam. Faith, great news. The market in your area is red hot right now. With the improvements you've made to the property, we can list for at least $750,000 once the mortgage is fully paid off next month. The lake house properties you were interested in viewing are still available. I stopped reading, my chest tightening. Faith was planning to sell the house I had nearly bankrupted myself to save, the house where my grandson was growing up, and she was planning to use the money to buy a lake house? I scrolled further through my emails, finding more misdirected correspondence about vacation properties, investment opportunities, and luxury home listings. It painted a clear picture. Faith and Connor intended to sell the house as soon as the mortgage was paid off, the mortgage I was paying, and upgrade to an even more expensive property. All while I lived in an apartment with leaky faucets and second-hand furniture. My phone rang. Diana's name flashed on the screen. Edith? Are we still on for lunch today? I had completely forgotten. Diana, I'm sorry. Something's come up. You're not canceling again, are you? Her voice held a hint of frustration. Let me guess. Faith needs something? The accuracy of her assessment made me wince. Not exactly. I just learned something. Disturbing about Faith. About what she's been doing with the money I've been giving her. Diana's tone softened. Oh, Edith. I'm coming over. Don't argue. 30 minutes later, Diana sat across from me at my small kitchen table, her face growing increasingly troubled as I explained everything. The mortgage payments, becoming an unwitting co-owner, and now Faith's secret plans to sell the house. That ungrateful little... Diana stopped herself. I'm sorry. I know she's your daughter, but Edith, this is beyond taking advantage. This is exploitation. I stared into my tea, now cold. I've been such a fool. No, Diana said firmly. You've been a mother. You wanted to help your child. She's the one who should be ashamed. What do I do now? Diana reached across the table and squeezed my hand. What do you want to do? I thought about Faith's text message, asking me to sign more papers. About her casual dismissal of me at the party. About the years I'd spent working extra shifts to put her through college, the vacations I'd never taken, the retirement I'd sacrificed, all so Faith could have everything I never had. I want to cancel that final payment, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. The balloon payment that would clear the mortgage. Diana nodded slowly. And then what? I don't know yet. But I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of being used. That evening, I called my bank and confirmed the cancellation of the automatic payment scheduled for January 10th. Then I called a lawyer, a former colleague of Harold's, whom I hadn't spoken to in years, and made an appointment for the following day. As I prepared for bed that night, my phone chimed with another text from Faith. "Mom, did you see my message about Thursday? It's really important. The closing is next week." Closing? So it was already arranged. They had already scheduled the sale of the house, probably timed perfectly for after the mortgage would be paid. Off. My mortgage payment? I didn't respond. The next morning, I met with Harold's old colleague, Richard Simmons, at his law office downtown. He was older now, with more gray hair than I remembered, but his eyes were still sharp and kind. "Edith, it's been too long," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "What can I help you with today?" I laid out the whole situation. The years of mortgage payments, my discovery that I was a co-owner, and Faith's apparent plans to sell the property without my knowledge or consent. Richard listened carefully, occasionally making notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair with a thoughtful expression. "Well, Edith, the good news is that as a co-owner of the property, Faith cannot legally sell the house without your signature. That's likely why she wants you to come over to sign papers. And if I don't sign, then she can't sell. Not without going through a lengthy and expensive legal process to force a sale, which would almost certainly fail given the circumstances." I nodded slowly. "What if? What if I wanted to stop the final mortgage payment?" "You're under no obligation to make that payment, Edith. If Faith and Connor default on the balloon payment, the bank could potentially foreclose. But since you're a co-owner and have been making the payments, you'd have strong options to negotiate." For the first time in days, I felt a sense of clarity. Faith had been using me, counting on my maternal instinct to sacrifice everything for her. She had hidden her true intentions, letting me believe I was helping keep her family in their home, when really I was funding her upgrade to an even more luxurious lifestyle. As I left Richard's office, my phone rang. Faith again. "This time?" I answered. "Mom, finally. Did you get my messages? I need you to come sign those papers tomorrow. It's really important." "What papers exactly, Faith?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "Just some bank things for the house. Nothing for you to worry about." "Does it have anything to do with selling the house?" A pause. "How did you—" "I mean, yes, we're considering some options, but—" "Faith," I interrupted, "I'm not signing anything. And I've canceled the final mortgage payment." The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought she might have hung up. Then, "You did what?" "Mom, you can't be serious." Faith's voice had shifted from shock to something harder. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I stood on the sidewalk outside Richard's office, watching people rush by. Normal people with normal lives, not dealing with daughters who saw them as nothing but an ATM. "I'm very serious, Faith. I know about your plans to sell the house once the mortgage is paid off. The mortgage I've been paying for 5 years. You've been snooping through my emails?" Her voice rose an octave. "That's a complete invasion of privacy." "No, Faith. Your real estate agent copied me by mistake. But that's beside the point. You were going to sell the house without even telling me. A house I legally co-own, by the way." Silence. Then, "What are you talking about?" "When you had me sign those refinancing papers 3 years ago, you made me a co-owner of the property. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" "Mom, you're confused. You're getting older and—" "Don't." My voice was sharper than I'd ever used with Faith. "Don't try to make this about my age or my mental capacity. I've spoken with my bank and a lawyer. I know exactly what's been happening." Another pause. When Faith spoke again, her tone had changed completely. Softer, pleading. "Mom, please. We need that payment. The bank will foreclose if we don't make it. We'll lose the house." "You mean the house you were planning to sell anyway?" That was just an idea we were exploring. Nothing was decided." Her voice quavered. Please, Mom. If not for me, then for Mason. You wouldn't want your grandson to lose his home, would you? The emotional manipulation was so transparent I almost laughed. She'd been using Mason as leverage for years, knowing my soft spot for my only grandchild. Faith, I've made my decision. The payment is canceled. Fine, she snapped, her gentle tone vanishing. Then come over right now. We need to talk about this face to face. I checked my watch. I'll be there at 4. I spent the next 2 hours in a coffee shop, gathering my thoughts and preparing for the confrontation to come. My phone buzzed with texts from Faith every 15 minutes, alternating between guilt trips, accusations, and desperate pleas. I read them all but responded to none. At precisely 4 o'clock, I pulled into Faith's driveway. Connor's car was there too. Of course, she had called him home from work for reinforcement. I straightened my shoulders, took a deep breath, and walked to the door. Faith yanked it open before I could knock. Her face was flushed, her eyes red-rimmed. Get in here, she hissed, pulling me into the foyer. I stepped inside the house, the house I had saved, the house I partially owned, and found Connor pacing in the living room. He stopped when he saw me, his expression a mixture of anger and panic. Edith, he said stiffly. Faith tells me you've decided to stop helping us with the mortgage. Not exactly, I replied, keeping my voice steady. I've decided to stop being taken advantage of. Faith made a choked sound. Taken advantage? Mom, how can you say that? After everything we've done for you. I stared at her, genuinely confused. What exactly have you done for me, Faith? She blinked rapidly. We let you be part of our lives. We invite you to our parties. We let you spend time with Mason. Let me? I repeated quietly. You let me clean your house, babysit your child, and fund your lifestyle. And when your fancy friends are around, you hide me in the kitchen and tell photographers not to include me in pictures because you don't need old people in them. Faith's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Connor stepped forward. Edith, be reasonable. We're family. Families help each other. Yes, they do, I agreed. But this hasn't been mutual help. This has been me giving and giving while Faith takes and takes. And worse, lying to me about it. Lying? I never... Faith started. You were going to sell this house without telling me. I cut in. A house I've poured nearly $200,000 into. A house I legally co-own. That's not just lying, Faith. That's fraud. Connor's face paled. Co-owner? What are you talking about? I looked at him carefully. You didn't know either? When Faith refinanced the mortgage 3 years ago, she had me added as a co-owner on the deed. Probably because the bank required it, given how much of the payments I was making. Connor turned to Faith, his expression hardening. You did what? Faith waved her hands dismissively. It was just a formality. It doesn't mean anything. It means, I said quietly, that you cannot sell this house without my signature, and I will not be signing anything. Faith's composure finally broke. You can't do this to us. We've already put a deposit down on the lake house. The seller won't wait. If we lose that property because of you? Because of me? I laughed, a short, sharp sound that felt foreign in my throat. Faith, listen to yourself. You were about to take the money from selling a house I paid for and use it to buy an even more expensive property. Did you ever once consider what that might mean for me? For my future? You're my mother, Faith said, as if that explained everything. You're supposed to want what's best for me. I do want what's best for you, but enabling your selfishness and entitlement isn't doing you any favors. Faith's face contorted. You're just jealous. You've always been jealous of me. The absurdity of the accusation stunned me momentarily. Jealous? Faith? I have worked myself to the bone to give you opportunities I never had. I put you through college. I helped with the down payment on your first condo. I've been making your mortgage payments for 5 years. And this is how you see it? If you really loved me, you wouldn't be doing this, Faith said, tears spilling down her cheeks. You're deliberately trying to ruin everything. Connor, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. Faith, that's enough. His voice was tight. Your mother is right. We've been taking advantage of her generosity. Faith whirled on him. Whose side are you on? I'm on the side of basic decency, Connor replied. I had no idea your mother was making our mortgage payments all these years. You told me that money was from your trust fund. Trust fund? I echoed. Faith never had a trust fund. Connor's face darkened further. And I certainly didn't know you made her a co-owner of the house without telling either of us. Faith looked trapped. Her gaze darted between Connor and me, searching for an escape. I did what I had to do, she finally said, lifting her chin defiantly. The bank wouldn't have approved the refinancing otherwise. And Mom didn't mind helping us. Did you, Mom? You were happy to do it. I was happy to help keep a roof over my grandson's head, I corrected. I was not happy to be financing your lifestyle while I live in a cramped apartment with leaky faucets. Faith's expression hardened. So what now? You're going to let the bank foreclose on your own daughter's house? On your grandson's home? I met her gaze steadily. No, Faith. I'm going to teach you a lesson you should have learned a long time ago. Actions have consequences. What's that supposed to mean? Faith demanded. It means I've made a decision. I took a deep breath. I'm selling my share of the house. Faith's face went completely white. You can't sell your share. Faith's voice was barely above a whisper. You can't do that to us. Actually, I can, I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. Richard, my lawyer, has already outlined the process. Connor sank onto the couch, running his hands through his hair. This is insane. All of it. Faith shot him a venomous look before turning back to me. Mom, please. We can work something out. We'll put your name on the lake house, too. You can visit whenever you want. I stared at my daughter, truly seeing her for perhaps the first time in years. This woman who shared my blood, but apparently none of my values. This stranger who could talk about cutting me out of family photos one day and offering me visiting privileges the next. Faith, I don't want to visit your lake house. I don't want to be an afterthought in your life that you trot out when it's convenient or hide away when it's not. That's not fair, she protested weakly. None of this is fair. I gestured around at the vaulted ceilings, the marble countertops, the designer furniture, all the trappings of a life I had helped fund while sacrificing my own comfort. I've given you everything, Faith. Money, time, support. And you've given me. What exactly? The privilege of being tolerated? The honor of babysitting when your regular sitter cancels? You're my mother, she said, as if that explained everything. That's what mothers do. No, Faith, that's what your mother did. But I'm done. The silence that followed was deafening. Connor stared at the floor. Faith's hands trembled. What do you want? She finally asked, her voice brittle. Just tell me what you want, and we'll do it. I want you to grow up, I said simply. I want you to take responsibility for your own life and stop exploiting mine. Faith flinched as if I'd slapped her. I've never… Faith. Connor's voice cut through her protest. Stop. Just stop. She turned to him, eyes wide with betrayal. You're taking her side? There are no sides here, he said wearily. Your mother is right. We've been living beyond our means and expecting her to cover the difference. It wasn't fair then, and it's not fair now. I hadn't expected support from Connor. In all the years I'd known him, he had always just gone along with whatever Faith wanted. This small act of integrity caught me off guard. Thank you, Connor, I said quietly. Faith looked between us, her composure crumbling. So what happens now? You sell your share and we lose everything? Is that what you want, Mom? To see us homeless? No, Faith. What I want is for us to figure out a solution that's fair to everyone. I pulled a folder from my purse. Documents Richard had helped me prepare. I have a proposal. Faith eyed the folder suspiciously but took it. Connor moved beside her to read over her shoulder. As they scanned the pages, their expressions shifted from confusion to disbelief. You want us to buy you out? Faith asked. Yes, at fair market value for my 1/3 share. That's approximately $250,000 based on current appraisals. Faith made a strangled sound. We don't have that kind of money. I know. That's why I'm proposing a payment plan. You and Connor pay me $2,000 a month, less than I've been paying for. Your mortgage, until the full amount is paid. No interest, just what's fair. And if we can't make the payments? Connor asked, his tone more curious than combative. Then we sell the house, split the proceeds according to ownership, and you can find something more within your actual budget. Faith's face had gone from pale to flushed. This is extortion. No, Faith, this is reality. Connor was still reading the document, his brow furrowed. There's something else here, about visitation with Mason. I nodded, my throat suddenly tight. Yes, regular scheduled visits. Not just when it's convenient for you, and not just when you need a babysitter. Mason is the only thing in this house I truly care about. Faith looked up, her eyes narrowing. So you're using him as leverage? Making us pay for access to our own son? No, Faith. I'm ensuring that you don't use Mason as leverage against me, the way you've been doing for years. I turned to Connor. I've always respected you as Mason's father. I'm simply asking for respect in return. Connor nodded slowly. That's fair. Connor, Faith exclaimed. It is fair, Faith, he said firmly. Your mother has been more than generous. This whole situation is of our making, not hers. Faith sank into a chair, looking defeated. I need time to think. Take all the time you need, I said, standing. Richard has drawn up the formal agreement. You can sign it, or we can proceed with the forced sale. Either way, I won't be making any more mortgage payments. Mom, Faith said, her voice suddenly small, like the little girl who used to climb into my lap for comfort. I'm sorry, about the photos, about saying those things. I was just trying to impress my boss. For a moment, I almost wavered. Almost slipped back into the familiar pattern of excusing Faith's behavior, of putting her needs above my own. But then I remembered the years of sacrifice, the emptied savings account, the casual cruelty. I hope you are sorry, Faith. But I need more than words now. I turned and walked to the door, my heart pounding. As I reached for the handle, I heard small footsteps running down the stairs. Grandma, Mason called, launching himself at me. I didn't know you were here. I knelt down, hugging him tightly. His small arms around my neck, the scent of his shampoo. These were the things that mattered. Hi, sweetie. Are you staying for dinner? He asked hopefully. I glanced up to see Faith and Connor watching from the living room doorway, their expressions unreadable. Not today, I said, smoothing his hair. But I'll see you very soon, okay? I promise. Mason pouted but nodded. Okay, I made a new puzzle yesterday. It has 1,000 pieces. Wow, that's impressive. You'll have to show me next time. I stood, my knees creaking slightly. I should go. Faith stepped forward, her movements uncertain. Mom, wait. Give me a call when you've made your decision, I said, and walked out the door. As I drove home, a strange sense of lightness filled me. For years I had carried the burden of Faith's expectations, her demands, her entitlement. Today I had finally set that burden down. My phone buzzed with a text from Diana. How did it go? I pulled over to respond. I stood my ground, for the first time in my life. Her reply came immediately. Proud of you. Wine and pizza at my place. Tonight? I smiled, feeling tears prick at my eyes. Yes, I'll bring the wine. As I pulled back onto the road, I realized something. This was what freedom felt like. 3 months passed. The early spring sunshine filtered through my new curtains, pale blue, a color I had always loved, but Faith had deemed too old-fashioned. I sipped my morning coffee, enjoying the quiet of my apartment, which no longer felt small and cramped, but cozy and mine. My phone rang. Connor's name appeared on the screen. Good morning, Connor, I answered, setting down my cup. Edith. His voice was formal but not unfriendly. Just calling to let you know the first payment has been transferred to your account. Thank you. After weeks of negotiations, Faith and Connor had finally agreed to my terms. They would keep the house, pay me for my share in monthly installments, and ensure I had regular time with Mason. And, Mason's been asking when he can come stay with you. We thought maybe this weekend, if that works for you? I smiled. I'd love that. I've got his room already. Since our confrontation, things had changed dramatically. Faith had been cold and distant, communicating mostly through Connor. But gradually, a new dynamic had emerged. Connor had stepped up, taking more responsibility for their finances and, surprisingly, for maintaining our family relationships. He had been the one to call each week, to arrange for me to see Mason, to make sure the payments were made on time. Great, I'll drop him off Saturday morning. There was a pause. Faith might come too, if that's okay. My heart skipped a beat. Of course. After we hung up, I sat for a while, staring out the window. Faith coming along was new. A step forward, perhaps. Diana's words from the previous night echoed in my mind. You didn't just stand up for yourself, Edith. You might have actually saved your relationship with Faith in the long run. Sometimes love means setting boundaries. I hoped she was right. That afternoon, I visited the local garden center. With the first payment from Faith and Connor, I had decided to treat myself to something I'd always wanted. A small container garden. For my balcony. As I carefully selected herbs and flowers, I felt a sense of possibility I hadn't experienced in years. Mrs. Williams? A familiar voice caught my attention. I turned to see Mrs. Thornton from the bank, pushing a cart filled with rose bushes. Call me Edith, please, I said, smiling. Those roses are gorgeous. Thank you. It's my one extravagance. She glanced at my selections. Starting a garden? Just a small one. For my balcony. Good for you. She hesitated. How are things with the situation we discussed? Better. Much better. I briefly explained the agreement. I'd reached with Faith and Connor. Mrs. Thornton nodded approvingly. I'm glad to hear it. It takes courage to stand up for yourself, especially with family. It does, I agreed. But it's worth it. As we parted ways, I felt a surge of gratitude for the small kindnesses. Mrs. Thornton's concern, Diana's unwavering support, even Connor's unexpected alliance. They had helped me find my voice when I needed it most. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. I had spent the previous day preparing, baking Mason's favorite cookies, buying ingredients for pancakes, setting up a new puzzle on the coffee table. At precisely 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Mason bouncing with excitement, Connor standing behind him with an overnight bag, and Faith hanging back, her expression guarded. Grandma! Mason rushed forward, hugging me tightly. Dad says I can stay until tomorrow. That's right, I said, returning his embrace. We're going to have so much fun. I brought my new dinosaur book, he announced, already heading inside to explore. Connor handed me the bag with an awkward smile. All his stuff is in there. Call if you need anything. Thank you, Connor. He nodded, then glanced at Faith. I'll wait in the car. Take your time. As he walked away, Faith and I stood facing each other. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. Your apartment looks different, she finally said. I redecorated a bit. She nodded, her eyes taking in the new curtains, the freshly painted walls, the small touches that had transformed my space. It looks nice. Thank you. Faith shifted her weight, clearly uncomfortable. Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about everything you said. I waited, not rushing to fill the silence as I might have done before. You were right, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been selfish and entitled, and I've taken you for granted. Forever. I hadn't expected this, not so soon and not so direct. Connor and I have been seeing a financial counselor, she went on, and I've been talking to someone, a therapist, about my issues with money, with status. That's good, Faith. I'm proud of you. She looked up, her eyes glistening. Are you? Really? Yes, I said honestly. It takes courage to look at yourself honestly, to try to change. Faith wiped quickly at her eyes. I want to do better. Be better. For Mason. For Connor. She hesitated. For you. I reached out and squeezed her hand briefly. That means a lot to me. From inside, we heard Mason calling for me. Faith smiled faintly. You should go. He's been excited about this all week. Would you like to come in? Have some coffee? I offered. She shook her head. Not today, but maybe next time. I'd like that. As Faith walked back to the car, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, hope, caution, a tentative optimism. Our relationship was far from healed, but for the first time in years, it felt like we were moving in the right direction. I closed the door and joined Mason, who was already setting up the puzzle. As we worked together, fitting pieces into place, I reflected on the changes of the past few months. I had gone from being the invisible, taken-for-granted mother to someone who commanded respect, not by demanding it, but by valuing myself enough to expect it. The monthly payments from Faith and Connor weren't just financial compensation. They were an acknowledgement of my worth, my contribution, my place in this family. And more importantly, I had found my voice. That evening, after Mason was asleep in the small second bedroom I had prepared for him, I sat on my balcony among my new plants. The night air was cool but pleasant. My phone buzzed with a text from Diana. How's it going with the little guy? Wonderful, I replied. Faith came with them to drop him off. We talked a little. Diana's response was quick. Progress. How are you feeling? I thought about it for a moment. At 60, I had finally learned to prioritize my own well-being. I had stood up to manipulation and emerged stronger. I had set boundaries and watched relationships transform because of them. I feel free, I typed. As I set my phone down, I gazed at the stars appearing one by one in the darkening sky. I thought about the New Year's Eve party that had changed everything. That moment when Faith had asked the photographer to exclude me. Nothing personal. We just don't need old people in these photos. Those words had cut deep. But in a way, they had also set me free. They had forced me to see the truth I had been avoiding for years, that I deserved better. That being a mother didn't mean being a doormat. That true love, including love for oneself, required respect. I had lost a house, but gained something far more valuable. Self-respect. And maybe, just maybe, a chance at a healthier relationship with my daughter. Inside, Mason slept peacefully. Tomorrow, we would make pancakes and finish the puzzle. Next weekend, perhaps Faith would join us for coffee, Small steps toward a new normal. For now, though, I was content to sit among my newly planted herbs and flowers, breathing in the scent of possibility. At 60, my life wasn't ending. It was just beginning. And this time, I would live it on. My own terms. The cut had been deep, but as with many wounds, the healing had made me stronger than before.